What's going on, Average Joes? Today, I want to talk about why you should read The Mortal Techniques. What's going on? Welcome back. I am Joe, and I'm just here to give you an Average Joe's thoughts, opinions, and views, lists, and whatnot toward books and anything about books in the fantasy, sci-fi, mystery, thriller, and some non-fiction space. For those are the books that I like to talk about and read. So I'm just here to give you my average thoughts, opinions, and why you should do certain things, like why you should read the Mortal Techniques series by Rob J Hayse. So as always, please like, subscribe, and do all those wonderful things for my videos. It really helps me out. And if you at any point in time you want to drop a comment, that's how I like to interact with everybody down there. So just we can talk about more about the videos and whatnot in the comments. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite series, and I have to put series in quotation marks because it's not a true series. It is basically a collection of standalones in the same universe. And what I mean by a collection of individual standalones in the same universe, that's exactly what these are. Each book in this universe, so there's 3 books so far in the Mortal Techniques universe, well, 3 and a short story. It goes Never Die, Pawn's Gambit, Spirits of Vengeance, and the short story is Sentry's Blade. And how these are constructed is that each story, each book is its own self-contained standalone story. You could pick up any one of these and just read it, and you have a beginning, middle, end. You won't be lost as to what's going on. But that comes with an asterisk and a caveat a little bit. To me, I am just here to talk to you about why you should read the Mortal Techniques and why you should get into it, because I think there's something here for everyone and it is very approachable. So I'm going to structure this I'm going to go over each book because like all 4 books I'm going to go over I've read, and the universe is going to expand. It is left open for more, but I can talk about each of these books because they're standalone. So it's not, so talking about the plot in the third plot and what's going on in the third book is not going to give away anything in the first book, because they're each their own self-contained story. And while they have lots of crossover, there are characters that cross over or references to characters or all kinds of references and connections throughout all of this because it's the same universe and there's some overlap. There's even repeating characters. That's why it's not going to have any sort of spoilers, because although they have all these connections, they're all standalone, self-contained stories on their own. Having said that, I do believe, and most people who have read this would probably believe that you should read them in order. They have the published order is the chronological order of how you should read them, except Sentry Blade. That one's just a short story. It's only like 30 pages long, and it just kind of enhances some other things. It does take place chronologically, everything. So it is the best way to read in that order. However, we'll get into more specifics as I go along. Starting off with Never Die. This is the very first one in the series, in the world. And this one was a finalist in the SPFBO in 2019, I think it was. I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah. So it was a finalist, top 10 finalist in that that awards group. And the setup for this story is that it is an assembling of heroes. So something to know about the Mortal Techniques world is that it is East Asian inspired, I believe, very, very heavy Japanese inspired. I don't know the specifics behind the inspiration, but it's very heavy in like Japanese lore and East Asian type combat and everything, like samurai, the type of swords, the type of words and everything like that. The heroes in this world, like once there are warriors, but then there's these people that once you become like these heroes, I forgot if that's actually what they call them, but you get this name, and this name is what everybody calls you at, what you're known for. Usually it has to do with your technique. Usually each hero has mastered one specific technique, which is their kind of like their magic, their ki. I think it's spelled QI. I don't really know how you pronounce that, ki or chi. It is that technique is what makes them who they are. It has their name. It is what they do. So one of the main characters that's mentioned throughout all of these books is called the Sentry Blade, and that is due to his technique about raining down swords from the sky, 100 swords, Sentry Blade, Sentry 100, Sentry Blade. That is his that is his best and most coveted technique. That's why they call him that, and then so on and so forth. People are known by these things. Some of them earn a title for other ways. Like in the second book, the main character earned her own title through something else because she doesn't have magic. She's just very smart, but we'll get to that. Anyway, Never Die, assembling of heroes. this little boy is going around recruiting these legendary heroes to assemble her team to go take out the emperor at the time, because the emperor is this really overbearing ruling dictator who is just ruling with an iron fist. And that kind of, there's lots and lots of lore in this one because of all the heroes. You go through the world, there's a little bit of a traveling because he picks up the main character and then they go along and pick up the next one and the next one, and then their team grows and they go, okay, we've assembled our team, now let's go fight the emperor, sort of setup. This one is, each of the heroes are very unique. There's always going to be comedy in these stories. So each of them have their own comedic flair. Some of them have their own very unique techniques. And I really like the differences in each of the characters. They all feel very different tonally and like technique wise and everything like that from each other. Motivations. This one has a huge and awesome twist at the end. Great ending for Never Die. Really making me hyped for the rest of the series. I loved the entire book, but like my wife read this book and she was going along most of it and she was just like, yeah, it's okay, it's very action heavy, it's very fast paced, it's not a very long book. I think it's just under 300 pages. That's another good point about this one. It's short, standalone, under 300 pages. You can really get a feel for the world if you want to push on, but it's very fast paced, decently action heavy. And she read most of it. She was like, yeah, it's okay, I think it's decent. And then she got to the end and she felt way better about it after the end of the book, because the ending did have a big twist, an awesome moment that like I didn't see coming, and it was just fantastically done. So that is Never Die. High paced, not very long, great introduction to this world and the lore. It does have a 3.9 on Goodreads, which isn't too high. And I will say this is probably the weaker of the books so far, and I think everybody agrees with that. But I still think it's very good, and it should still be where you start because of the crossover. And the main character in Pawn's Gambit, which is book 2, is a character in the first book, but like not a main character. She pops up, she's there, but she's the main character in Pawn's Gambit. So segue to Pawn's Gambit. It starts off with the familiar character that we know, and picking up years later after they have ran into her and something that she has been through. This is a really cool set, a very unique setup to me, and that is the gods. Every year, every 10 years, I forgot, every how many years, the gods have a competition with one another. The winner of the competition gets to run heaven, I believe, and each god must recruit their own champion, because it's the champions that actually compete, not the gods themselves. So they recruit their own champion and they put them on a scavenger hunt. Every single god has an item that they put forth to the scavenger hunt, and it is hidden somewhere on Earth, in the world. And the champions are set out to go find these things, find these relics, whatever items. And it's basically from that, it's anything goes. So a lot of the gods will choose these badass warriors or thieves, and our main character is a tactician. She is the best like world war tactician that has ever been. She is the master of chess and all of these things, but she's kind of an alcoholic and down in her luck. So she has a mixed past, and the god that recruits her, I believe, is the god of lost things. She convinces her to go on this, to be her champion. So she goes on this quest to find all these scavengers, or find all these items, and they run into other champions. There's once again a lot of fighting, high-paced action. There are twists. This one brings an element of very smart tactical sense, because it is a tactician, the main person. And once again, this has a very smart, well thought out, awesome ending. These endings, Rob J Hayse is definitely good at writing endings. They don't just kind of fizzle out. They aren't very predictable. There are things that happen that I'm sure some people can predict certain things, but the endings are fantastic. This one is mostly concentrated into that one main character, whereas the first one, that you have the main POV, but then you still have the rest of the people with them. This one mostly concentrated on one main character and going through her journey and her life, and then there's one or two side characters that are around that you begin to really like as well. And this one also isn't very long. I think it's only like 350 400 pages, and it is very well done. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It has a 4.29 on Goodreads, so you'll get very deep into this one character, and again, it'll add new elements to the lore, to the area, to everything that's going on in this world. Again, one of the characters that you're introduced to in Pawn's Gambit is a semi-main character in Spirits of Vengeance. And that's why I say to read in order, because you get your slow introduction to, you know that when they pop up in these books, like, oh, okay, I know where they came from. I know what they're talking about, although you don't need to. So, take out where you will. But Spirits of Vengeance, this is the longest book in the series. This is over 600 pages. I think it was like 650 or something. So very long. But with that length, because Rob J Hayse is so good at characters, I think this just really helps develop all of those characters. There are 4 main characters in this one, and you get POVs from each of them, but it's mostly like 2 of them that you get for the bulk of it. But the other 2, you still get a couple of POVs here and there, and then 1 or 2 from the bad guys too. So a lot more POVs, a lot more in depth with character, and this one also has a lot more time, I guess, to it, you could say, because they tell stories from the past and the main characters past, or all of the main characters past, and things that they've been through and how they got to where they are. So you get a lot more depth. There are a lot of ties in this one to the past 2 books, both of them, and I guess that helps with the length. But as these are getting bigger and broader and digging into the past, you really have so many ties with the previous books. And as I was reading, I would stop and think, like, wait, is that who I think it is, or are they referring to this? And I wish there was like an encyclopedia where I can check these crossovers. There's definitely a ton of character and place and happenings crossovers. This one, you really get much more into the details about the magic and the chi or the key, whatever you want to call it. In the first book, you have the heroes and they have their technique. Okay, cool. That's your technique. You get a little bit of insight as to how they do their technique. And then like Pawn's Gambit, there's also a little bit of talk about people's technique, but there's not that much. This one of the people is actually trying to learn and control and develop a technique or a couple of techniques. So you really get in deep to how this magic works, how they work their chi, their key, how they do everything that they do. So that was really awesome about this. On top of the big character development, you're going to get the magic system development too. You say magic system, so that is huge development in this one, and it really adds a lot to it. Tons and tons of good Easter eggs, and once again, another very good ending and a great setup for future books. So I know there's going to be more in this series. It's not a cliffhanger, but it's definitely, the other ones end very cleanly. This one ends with like, okay, let's see what happens next. There's clearly more that's going to happen after this. So that's also what was going on with this one. And then the last one, Century Blade, is the short story. This one came out and you can read it. You can pretty much read this anytime you want. It's not going to spoil anything. Spirits of Vengeance, the Century Blade I think it came out right before Spirits of Vengeance as like a hype and like a little bit of backstory to things that happen in Spirits of Vengeance. The main character in Century Blade is the Century Blade, who I mentioned before, and he's mentioned in all the books. He's mentioned in the very beginning of Never Die. He has a big point in Spirits of Vengeance, or a big focus in Spirits of Vengeance, all of these things. So you can read it whenever. It's 30 pages. Oh, Spirits of Vengeance also has a 4.53 on Goodreads, which is pretty fantastic. Century Blade, I didn't even rate because it's a 30-page short story. It's got a pretty low rating, 3.87, which is whatever. It's a short story, so you're only going to read it for more in-depth, more backstory into what's going on. And that's what that is. So that takes a look into the past of that short story, and that's the mortal techniques. So progressing through I think every story here has something that you can take away from it. Each of them have some comedy. They're going to have some deeper emotional moments, some fairly dark moments, a lot of high action, a lot of unique and different kind of action too, especially when you get into the different techniques that they're using. It's very, very cool in that sense, how they combat, how they're thinking. Each character feels distinctly their own. It is fantastic. And other people have liked and thought about this is that they are standalone. So you don't feel a series commitment to it. And you can pick up any of these that you want in any order. But I suggest reading them in publication in order, because that is chronological order. And that's how you can, you'll hear the ties, you see the ties and all of these things, but it's not necessary. That's just a thing to remember. It's whatever you feel. Now, if you're really on the edge of this style of book, maybe go with the one you might like better. So, Never Die, The Assembling of Heroes, a bit shorter, high action. Pawn's Gambit, much more tactical, scavenger hunt, but still a very good fleshed out character. And then Spirits of Vengeance is going to be longer, more character development, more depth into the magic system. At times can be a bit slower. Like there's a couple of like side questy type things that happen. We're there for, I don't think they should be taken out. Like there's a lot of times where books are long and I'm like, that wasn't necessary. Sometimes there were things that were written a little bit longer than they needed to be, but I think everything lends itself to the character development and to the final conclusion of the book. So I think it's very, very good. I think he does a very smart way of having everything lean and necessary into these stories. That's each of those books, and that is Mortal Techniques. I think it is a fantastic series that I can't wait to read more of. I think I've given all of these books 5 stars, and I've been a little bit pickier lately about my 5-star reads. Never Die might have been a 4. I can't really remember. I know I thoroughly enjoyed it, so it might have been a 5. I can't really remember. But Spirits of Vengeance, 100% 5-star book. I think it's in the top 3 of my books that I've read this year. It might even be the best. It's a weird one because it is a standalone, so self-contained, fantastic story. That's usually what you like in a favorite book. But it's kind of also cheating because it gets extra points for having ties to other books in a series, but it doesn't need the other books for those to be it's great on its own. It just appreciates it more with all the other ties to the other books and that world. So like, while some other books are part of series and it's like, okay, well, I guess I can pick out this one book that's great from this series, even though I need the other books in the series to make it great. These could stand on their own as standalones, but the other ties to the world make it even better, if that makes sense. You let me know. So that is Mortal Techniques. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Also, all of these are on Kindle Unlimited, so that is even bigger bonus. I've read all of these through Kindle Unlimited, and if you are a book collector and like awesome editions of books, I saw they had a limited edition hardback illustrated of these, and oh my goodness, they look fantastic and absolutely gorgeous. These are ones that I never buy multiple editions of books, and I never reread books, but this series is one that I could see. Well, I did it on Kindle Unlimited, so I didn't actually buy them, so I'd be okay buying the awesome editions. Also, I could see myself rereading these just so I can see all of the ties, because there's so many Easter eggs within all of these books that I feel like at times I missed half of them, but I feel like I got so many of them. So I would read through them again just to see those ties, just to see how they all tie together, how Rob decided to put in some of these Easter eggs. And for anybody else that has read this, I think it would be very interesting. We'll see what happens how long the series goes, but to read this reverse chronologically would also be very interesting and unique, and I think would be doable. It's kind of weird to do, but I think it would be really cool because you get a person's main story and then you go back and then see where they all started, and you get still its own self-contained story. Then you go back again and get their own self-contained story and see that other person's start. So to go reverse, you might be able to catch other things as well. Might be kind of weird. It's something that would be very unique, but it's doable, I think, to me. But either way, I think this would be, years down the road after more of the series has come out, I could totally reread these because I'm sure there's going to be connections with all of the books going forward. That's Mortal Techniques. So let me know what you think. Let me know if this is something that appeals to you. If you have any questions about the series specifically, also let me know about that down in the comments, and we can chat more there.